Anita?
Mel, are you broken?
Yes.
Uh-oh. What are we going to do about that?
We're going to talk about it, which is hilarious because this is a topic that's come up in the Widow Wives Club. And right now I am very impaired.
What
This
kind of
I
impaired?
can't see.
So your eyeball's not working
Yeah, it's not working.
and
And
you have a migraine.
yeah,
Yeah.
don't
Did
worry.
you have
Cheese
migraines? Oh,
crackers. Okay, what?
did you have migraines before Scott died?
Actually, yes, because I got in a car accident. But I have to say, grief exacerbated everything.
Mm.
So, what are we talking about today?
We are talking about the physical manifestations of grief. Did
That's
you hear
me.
the toilet just flush?
Your toilet just flushed? That's perfect.
Yeah. Um,
Okay,
so
go.
it's perfect timing for you because
Seriously.
you're a disaster.
I mean, even when we were recording this, you're like, I'm 15 minutes behind. And I was like, good, because I'm in bed on drugs. I can't see it in my eye.
You're a pirate without meaning to be a pirate.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I did have issues before with migraines just because of the accident, but the stress that widowhood brings is huge for physical pain.
Mm-hmm. And not just pain, but there's other manifestations too. So this is an interesting topic because I tried to look up and do a little bit of research on this. And I don't think it's a well-researched topic. And I think that part of the reason is because it's kind of where, the mind and the body, ooh, look how weird it is with the background,
I know.
mind and body, where they intersect. And so it's kind of like not mental health and it's not physical health. So whose is it? And it's kind of not either. And add on top of that, that grief is not a pathology. It's not considered an illness or a sickness, or you know what I'm saying?
Or a science.
Well, it just doesn't, it's just a normal part of
I don't know how helpful I'm going to be in this widow, so FYI, I'll
it's
do
gonna
my
be
best.
it's gonna be great. Because I can just be like exhibit A,
Mel.
Mel, exhibit B, Mel. So I think it's interesting because we talk about grief. We don't want grief to be thought of as an ailment or something that's wrong with you. It's the normal reaction to loss. And however that works for you is normal, and it's not a problem, and it's not a pathology or an illness or a sickness. So
It just is grief. So,
it's
Anita,
uh-huh.
did you have any physical manifestations after
Yeah.
this? Okay, go.
I think that the biggest one for me, and I think that a lot of people have this, was just such fatigue, and not like emotional fatigue, but like I have to take a nap. I am exhausted. My body is tired. And I think at first I just assumed that it was because of the physical things that I was having to do. Like we weren't sleeping. I'm taking care of the kids all of the time, is never having a break. But as time went on, I started to realize that it wasn't just that it was actually grief that my body was processing, and it was making me tired. And it's gotten a little better, but for that first year, I seriously needed to take naps all the time. And I felt like a toddler. Nap time.
I mean, that's me still right now.
Yeah. So I think that was the biggest one. And, sleep is a huge issue in grief. And so I think that just adds to the fatigue also, is that we don't sleep well.
Yeah.
Interrupted sleep, disturbed sleep.
Or no sleep.
Yeah. What about you?
Like I mentioned before, I was in a car accident before Scott died. My car accident was a year and a half before he died. I was just kind of starting to maybe show some progress. I mean, we're talking like 2 or 3 days before Scott died with my physical limitations. I was in rehab a lot, like physical therapy sorts of things, 4 doctor's appointments every single week for a year and a half. And then he dies. And then I'm still in 4 appointments a week. And so I asked my PT, I was like, what is the deal? Am I making this up? Because I know I'm going through heavy stuff. And I'm so glad that my physical therapist, okay, I'm not glad for this part, but he had lost a child and I had known about it. Yeah. And the his kid was a teenager, 16, I think. And so he was very familiar with grief. He was one of Scott's friends. He was one of the first people that I called when Scott died, just as a friend. Because I'm like, what do I do? So I knew that he had expertise in this area with healing as well and grief. And I'm just like, something is wrong with me, because all these other people are coming in and they're not in PT for now 2 years. And he's just like, look, when you have grief, it's such a huge amount of stress on your body and your mind that it can delay healing. And he goes, and sometimes there are accidents, like, yeah, you got rear-ended and it was bad, but a lot of people recover more quickly. And he goes, and some people just have more complicated recoveries. So he's just like, you have one of those and you have grief on top of it. And so that was really helpful for me to hear, because I just thought, man, at this point, are my injuries not recovering because it's psychosomatic? And you and I, Anita, have referred to that stress test that's 100. Losing a partner is 100 out of 100 on the test. And look at how many illnesses are caused by stress or internalizing stress, or long-term studies where people have been in abusive relationships or had child abuse. Like they take the stress and they go inward with it, and sometimes can get autoimmune diseases. Or like there was an instance of somebody who was unable to speak about the trauma for years, and they ended up getting throat cancer, and that's what they died from. Yeah, so our bodies internalize stress. And of course, I'm just a rando on the internet with blue hair, not a doctor, so take that for what it's worth, but just as my layperson observations and some academic research reading, but mostly non-academic research reading is what I have come to learn so far in this journey. We've also heard of a lot of our widow friends who are maybe our age and maybe didn't have gray hair to begin with, but they started getting gray hair, or their hair started falling out.
Yeah.
Didn't yours fall out?
No, I don't have any hair anyway. But okay. No, I know a lot of people who their hair has fallen out. And in talking about stress, I mean, there is a biological reason for these things to be happening. And I think it's been researched a lot more recently, and we understand it more, but we still don't understand it because our bodies are like magic and mysterious. And it's all about hormones. As my grandma used to say, she used to call them hormones. Your hormones, there's cortisol and there's adrenaline, and there's these different hormones that are in our bloodstreams and that are being produced as a result of that stress, because we're in that sympathetic fight or flight or freeze category. And so our body is preparing those or producing those to help us tackle what we need to tackle, even though there's nothing to tackle. Yes, Mel.
Medical professional, using medical terms, sympathetic. Explain to everyone what that means. When
so there's 2 nervous systems. I need to make that stop being like that.
Okay, we had a Zoom background break and a drink break because we have bodies and we're broken. Okay, go.
Okay, there's 2 sympathetic, or there's 2. There's 2 separations in our nervous system. There's the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system is responsible for taking care of all of the normal day-to-day activities of the body. So the things that go on without our thinking, our digestion, our breathing, our just being normal and being able to function, heart rate, things like that. So when the parasympathetic nervous system is in control, things are smooth sailing and we're just on autopilot. When the sympathetic nervous system gets online, that is our stress related nervous system. That's like, we need to get our muscles prepared. We need to increase our breathing, our heart rate, things to get us ready to take action, to leap into action, to fight off the bear or the lion or the whatever that it is.
Or the llama.
Or the llama, the crazy llama. So those are the two different sections of the nervous system. Parasympathetic is calm, not needing to be in any sort of stress because things are good and we're just able to take care of the things kind of in the background mode. And the sympathetic is like, we got to gear up. We got stuff we got to do. So when that sympathetic nervous system, and we need both of them, they're both a part of our bodies and our physiology, and we need both of them, but it's supposed to be that our parasympathetic nervous system is doing its thing. And then we have times where the sympathetic nervous system comes online and then it calms down and we go back to the parasympathetic nervous system when we're just doing our thing, and then boop, and then boop, right? But when we're in grief or when we're in stress, this sympathetic nervous system is here all the time, and it's producing that adrenaline and that cortisol and those hormones that are responsible for increasing our ability to take action. And those are not meant to be long-term hormones or long-term chemicals. And so they have effects on us, and they're not necessarily good effects. And so a lot of the symptoms that we have in grief can be explained with those types of things. So you've talked about this, Mel, before, but in the months after a spouse dies, widows or widowers are more likely to die themselves. And there's something called the broken heart syndrome, where it's not like, oh, I'm so sad that I'm going to die. It's like the physical stress of your body puts stress on your heart, and your heart gives out. So, I mean, it's not in our heads, but it is in our heads because our heads are what are producing all of these effects, because we feel the grief in our head and then our head translates it to our bodies.
This is interesting, talking about cortisol and adrenaline. So we know adrenaline, like you said, you're running from the bear, and you could be running and have a broken leg and you don't even feel it because you're just going. Well, then when your adrenaline leaves your body, boom. Now you're feeling all the things. So if you talk about that and with regard to grief, I mean, it's a little bit different with your person dying than a bear chasing you. But in some cases, like you are, like for a sudden death, for example, it's like they call the state hyperarousal, which you and I make fun of all the time because we're 10-year-old boys and we're like, please don't call it that. That's gross. But yeah, you're ramped up and you're just like, okay, what do I do next? I have to get this done. And like, I'm on it. And then it's going to crash at some point. And then you're going to feel the fatigue, and you're going to feel the muscle aches, and you're going to just feel all the things, or headaches, or whatever it is. And this reminds me of something else too. So I get lymph drainage massage every week, and my therapist tells me that the lymph system is responsible for basically like clearing out gunk of your body, right? Yeah. Is that a good way to put it for
gunk? Yes, gunk is a medical term.
I'm sure she put it another way, but like, come on, I'm on drugs. And
no, I mean, it's a fine description.
Thank you. And what happens when we are in high stress, we produce more cortisol. And so she tells me that the cortisol will have more cortisol, and then it will start crystallizing and it can settle in the lymph nodes. And if you're not clearing those things out, then they accumulate, and that's why you can get swollen lymph nodes. Or she notices in my body that, and over certain areas of the body, like I have higher amounts where it will accumulate. And so she'll say like, well, yeah, grief, like at the beginning was like lungs, heart, those areas. So and still I'll go, and I've had I think the first time I met her, she hadn't even walked in the room. Like I was laying on my back, on my stomach, and she could just see like swollen parts of my back, and she's like, oh man, we got a lot of work to do.
And we got lots of work to do.
Yeah. And so it's like, not that we need to go into my lymph drainage massage history, but that's another thing too, and I notice now that I've been going consistently, like once I have more stress and like I haven't gone to get it drained, like I'll feel pain and I'll feel aching, I'll feel tired, and you can drink as much caffeine as you want, but you're not going to feel any better. So we're all under high stress because obviously 100 of 100 is like the highest. So it makes sense that our bodies are kind of wrecked.
Yeah. And then there's other things like a lot of people will experience issues with their digestion, and not not necessarily just leaving it. We've talked about food and how food changes and our relationship with food, but not just that, but actually how our body digests food. We find people who have more GI issues, not being able to digest certain foods when they were able to before, just having like strange, really unexplainable things that they only make sense if they can be attributed to grief. And I don't know that we understand the mechanism for that, but we do know that the gastrointestinal system is affected by our mental health. Our anxiety, depression, grief all change how our gut functions. So a lot of people describe having issues with that.
Anita, and maybe you know the answer to this, maybe you don't. When adrenaline and cortisol kick in and we're in fight or flight, does our digestion shut off?
Yeah, it does. It probably doesn't shut off, but that's definitely one of those background, like, doesn't need to be happening right now. We need to divert the blood to the muscles and to the lungs and to the hearts, because those are the things that run away and fight, right? The digestive system doesn't need to be the priority in that, because again, it's supposed to be a short term, and then we go back to doing the digesting and the being relaxed. So yes, it does pull resources away from the digestive tract. So that does make sense. That, just that would cause those issues as well.
Definitely. We did a widowsode about food, and this reminds me of what our friend Jocelyn commented, and it really like helped me to kind of have an aha moment, even though in the background I kind of knew like, oh yeah, duh, Mel, you have this problem. But in that episode, we were mostly talking about like how food can change for us. And I mentioned how I have like 3 things I can eat now without feeling sick. And then Jocelyn commented, and her husband was a chef, and she was saying that she went from liquid diet first to then having to reintroduce solid foods, and it totally messed with her digestion. And like, how many of us, like when we had the initial shock of the death, like all we could have was after we were on water only for like 2 weeks, had smoothies or something easy to digest. And it takes some time to build that back up. And then your gut biome is different than before. And it's a long-term kind of way back to a healthy gut and digestion.
Yeah, totally. And I think it can be disconcerting because, like we've talked about before, you feel like you're going crazy, and then you're like, and then my health is gone. And another thing that happens really often is our immune system goes. And this is, again, I think it's related to stress and the stress hormones. And I didn't say epinephrine and norepinephrine. Those are also hormones that come out during that sympathetic nervous system excitement. But there are studies that show that so you have white blood cells, and there's a balance of which white blood cells you need and how many you need of each of those. And there's studies that show that the white blood cell balance is thrown off after the death of specifically your spouse. So, I think that a ton of people would raise their hand and say they got sick, like strep throat, pneumonia, bronchitis, the flu, hopefully not COVID, but probably COVID, after their spouse died. And all of these things get better with time. So, and I think, I don't know if that's because we don't feel that same intense, it's not like an emergency situation anymore. We get used to it. We grow to kind of live with it and not feel like it's a new situation. I don't know. But that's something that we deal with also, is that our immune system goes wacky.
Mm-hmm. Inflammation can be a real thing too. Also, we're wacky with our diets, and certain diet issues can cause inflammation. We're just a wreck, y'all.
Yeah. And cortisol is the inflammatory hormone. So when we have too much cortisol, then it causes inflammation. And inflammation is good short term, because it helps our body to repair and regenerate, but our bodies aren't designed to have that inflammation for long periods of time. So, and throw on top of that sleep problems, like we've already discussed. Sleep is the time where our bodies repair and regenerate, and we're able to, do the things to help boost our immune system. And so when we're not sleeping, boom.
Okay, what else?
So also we've talked about the chemicals like the hormones, which I don't know if you want a definition of what a hormone is, but a hormone is produced in one part of the body and is transmitted and is passed through the bloodstream to another part of the body to signal that part of the body to do something. So,
It's like I'm a hormone, I'm Mel hormone. Like, hey Anita, make me a sandwich. Signal.
yes, yes. See,
Sandwich
the brain
made.
produces you, or a different, it doesn't have to be the brain. Some of these are produced in different glands and they go to their other place. They go to the muscles and they say, make me a sandwich, or they say, get ready to fight. So we have those, but then we also have the chemicals in the brain that we know change, and those can produce anxiety and depression. And so we have those chemicals that we're dealing with as well that take a hit or that change. And so we have different capabilities of processing. And we've talked about widow brain, and widow brain comes from these things too. You know, our dopamine gets changed, our serotonin levels get changed. It's like all of these things just get thrown into a blender and then we're left to deal with it.
Such a bummer. This is a bummer.
I know. But maybe it's not a bummer because it's like you said before, when you felt like you were just being psychosomatic, and then somebody says, no, you're not crazy. This is for real. And sometimes it's different for different people. I mean, some people have muscle aches, some people have heart palpitations, some people have, there's just a lot of different things that can happen, but they can all be linked back to grief and trauma and what has happened to you. So
My
you're not crazy.
my favorite manifestation of grief is our friend Missy's foot.
What does her foot do?
She gets weird foot pain
Oh,
when she has grief.
that is weird.
That's why on my YouTube channel, to help people, there's like meditation music for foot pain.
The foot chakra.
I guess. Yeah, it's super weird where things can manifest, right?
Yeah, totally. So we have brain chemicals that are doing crazy things. We have the hormones in our bodies that are doing crazy things. We have sleep interruptions. We have immune system interruptions. We have our diet changes, our coping mechanisms. Like if you eat a ton of licorice because it makes you feel better, because it gives you that dopamine hit, it's not doing your body any favors.
What else?
I don't know.
Is that it?
Oh, yeah, I want to say one other thing.
Okay. What
Okay.
else, Anita?
So what I find really interesting about this is, in the beginning, we talked about how this is not, there's nothing to fix on you. You don't have a broken bone. You don't have a cut that needs to be sewn up. You don't need to take antibiotics. So everything that we're doing here is supportive therapy, where we're trying to, give you an environment that your body can feel better, sleep hygiene and these types of things. But I do think it's interesting because knowing that these things are rooted in physiology and biology, it seems like policies should reflect that, such as going back to work.
Ha 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 ha. Should. That would be awesome.
Yes, because it's not a made up thing. It's like, guess what? Going back to work is going to be really hard on your body, and you might need to sleep more, and you might need to have decreased hours, and you might need to have decreased responsibilities, or how long you get a bereavement policy. That could really do with some change.
Yes. Oh, hey, everyone, let's help make change in the world.
Call somebody, do something, make it happen.
Well, we'll have to do it because why not? But anyway, it's so interesting because it's interesting because the mental health community is always at odds with the medical community. And then even within itself, I mean, even psychology was not recognized by the medical community for a long time.
Right.
It was its own kind of woo-woo thing. Well, now it is. Anything having to do with what people are not able to see with their eyes and fix in an easy, clean, and linear fashion, aka the brain and feelings and like systems like that, it's always up for debate. So yeah, we definitely do need some change in policy. I don't know how to do that. So maybe we can all rise up as widows to help us, to help others, because it's true. It's like stress brings so much on all of us. And this is high stress. And there are a lot of people in high stress. Oprah, you're not a widow yet. Maybe the queen can help us. Can the queen
Yes.
help us change policies? Anyway, somebody help us figure it out. Who do
Mhm.
we talk to? Next, let's talk about some tips. So, all of these things that Anita has mentioned and that we've been discussing today have to do with stress. So, one, lower your stress. That sounds really funny, but there's a reason why meditation is used a lot in healing, especially for grief and high stress. The sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems that we were discussing, that goes hand in hand with why meditation is helpful, or anything to lower your heart rate down to get you to kind of that more regulated state. So we want to be more in the parasympathetic nervous system, correct?
Correct. That's
Yeah.
what we're meant to function in most times.
That's why people are like, self-care, meditation, yoga, and some other people might think that's so dumb and that's so like hippie. And it's like, but guess what? Actual academic studies are on those things, and it is true. Not
Yeah,
even
like
making that up.
Tai Chi has a lot of research behind it, interestingly enough, of all things. So
Sometimes what I have to do is I have to remember, yeah, Mel, even though you're thinking in your head and your thoughts are going here and you know this and you know that, your body is still a body and you have to attend to it as a thing. So it's like I'll maybe have a PTSD sort of a trigger, and so I'm like, okay, what's my problem? I don't feel safe. I need to tell myself I'm safe. And right now I've been doing like the EFT tapping, and just trying to do something that will like help me to come down from that and get to a baseline where my breathing is okay, where I am feeling safe and in a secure environment, and getting rid of distractions, and stuff that's like extra stimuli. And if that's not your thing, anything that's just grounding you, like jumping up and down, like go jump rope or something. So, or
trampoline party.
trampoline, playing with slime, playing with little fidget toys, like anything that can get you back in your body, because we do have an element of dissociation when we have PTSD and trauma. And so just stuff to bring you back down to kind of a baseline level is helpful. It will be different for everybody, but the thing that is common is breathing. So even breathing in for 5 breaths, holding it for 5 breaths, breathing out for 5 breaths will help regulate both of those.
I think also before you even get to that point is well, actually, I don't know if it's before you get to that point, but like we were saying before, realizing that yes, your body is experiencing this stressful situation and trying to figure out what is the bare minimum that you can do and survive and function. Like take everything else that you don't need to be doing and toss it out of your life. It's just like, what do you need to survive, and do those things and let the rest go, which is a lot easier to say than it is to do. For instance, something that we've done that is hard, but I think necessary, is I've pretty much eliminated all of the sports that my kids would have played. And that's hard because I feel like they're getting like the short end of the stick. But was it necessary? No, I needed to get rid of all of the things that I could get rid of to decrease that, base stress level. And then in the moment, some of those things like Mel was talking about, when you are feeling those stresses, trying to bring things down and make yourself feel safe.
Mm-hmm. It's a big one. It's a big one. A lot of us deal with it. What are some things that have worked for y'all? And what other ways have you had physical manifestations of grief?
Yeah, there's probably some strange ones. In reading the studies that I read, I thought it was really, really, really interesting that they defined prolonged grief as anything that lasted over 12 months. Can you believe that? I was like, who is
to cope?
who is writing these things? And the
People
good
that
news,
don't go through it. That's who. Jerks.
the good news is most of the physical manifestations, like I was saying before, lessen with time. So those really scary, like heart related issues, they get better with time. But in the same vein, if you are experiencing those issues and you're in early grief, take them seriously and go to the hospital if you need to. You know, don't ignore them, because it's a real thing and it's a little bit scary. But the good news is that they have shown that they lessen over time.
And there's nothing wrong if you need anything to help you with your mental health as far as medication, go do it. It doesn't have to be forever, but it could help you through probably the toughest time of your life.
And it's not in your head. It's biological. The chemicals in your brain, they have experienced an upset. And so you're not producing chemicals like you used to. And the receptors in your brain have also probably changed. And so you might need some help to feel normal. And it's not because you're a crazy person. It's because something you've experienced, this loss, this trauma, and things in your brain have changed. Amen. Namaste.
Namaste.
Go meditate now. Okay. So we want to hear about your experiences, what crazy symptoms that you have that are grief related, and what people have told you about.
Yeah.
And then go eat some cheese.
These are Chipotle cheddar sticks from Trader Joe's. I think yum. From Trader Joe's. Yeah. So thanks for being here today. I'm Mel.
I'm Anita. We're two young widows with bodies and brains. We're trying to help you figure out, what do we do now?